Okay, so here you can see I'm in the Epic Games launcher. All I've done is I've loaded the launcher and it's logged into my account, and I've gone to the Unreal Engine tab here. If I just go up to Library, um, ignore all this stuff here. This is all stuff that I've got from the marketplace, but yeah, ignore that. You won't see that on yours. Uh, and you'll see the version I'm using here is 4.27, which is the latest version of Unreal Engine 4. Unreal Engine 5 is currently available, however, it is still in early access, so we're not going to be using that just yet. And in all honesty, all the features we'll be using in Unreal Engine 4, um, as far as I can see anyway, are the same in Unreal Engine 5 anyway, in terms of the basics. So we're not missing anything by not using Unreal Engine 5 just yet. Um, so yeah, once you've got that installed, we're just going to hit launch. And it will eventually launch the engine. Obviously, depending on the hardware spec of your PC will depend on how quickly this launches. This is literally the first time it's running on this particular PC, so it's probably taking a little bit longer than normal. Anyway, you'll be greeted with this screen here. So Unreal Engine is used for multiple things: film, TV, architecture, visualization, product design. But we're focusing on games development here, so we're going to select games, hit next, and then you have the option of these templates. Okay, these are super useful in all honesty. Like first person, for example, it already gives you your WASD movement, jumping with the space bar, firing. It gives you a gun already and some hand models, things that essentially you could just change, swap in if you wanted to add in your own models, and you can sort of just customize the movement speeds and things like that. But you're always going to create movement with WASD, aren't you? So it just kind of gives you those things already rather than having to do them from scratch. So unless you're really experienced, you want to use one of these templates to start with, and we're going to use first person. First person is a really good um, template to work with when you're very first starting out, because third person, obviously, you would have to create your character. You'd have to have the animations for that character. You have to have the character rigged with a skeleton and all this kind of stuff, um, which in first person you don't have to worry about because you're essentially just a floating camera. So first person is a good place to start for games development really as a whole. So I'm going to go next. Just a few quick options here: Blueprint or C++. Unless you're proficient in C++, Blueprint is the way to go. Blueprints, visual scripting, um, node-based editing, and all these names for it. Like, this is used in industry. So those people that think, oh, I need to learn, the programming language, that's the best way forward. Although that, it was also used in industry as well. Blueprint scripting, visual scripting is used in industry just because, why spend ages typing something out when you can use the visual scripting? It's quicker, more efficient, unless you need to do certain things. But yeah, don't be put off by that visual scripting. It is used in industry. So maximum quality is fine. We're not going to have ray tracing unless you've got a super high-end PC. So yeah, ignore that. We're developing for desktop. Starter content has some really useful stuff. Some nicely pre-made materials. Some pre-made sort of game assets that you could drop in and use. Again, it gives you stuff to kind of play around with when you're starting. Again, if you're more experienced, then you'll probably have nothing there, but I'm going to include that starter content. Down the bottom here, choose a location where you want your project to be saved. Again, I'm just putting things on the desktop for ease and give it a name. Bear in mind, this is creating a project folder. Okay, it's not just creating a file that you double click and run like a Word document. It's creating a project folder where everything is stored. So make sure you are aware of where you're storing things. Names, let's call it test project. It will not accept spaces in names. Any kind of naming in Unreal Engine will not accept spaces, so just kind of get used to that. You might want to do, every new word starts with a capital. It's quite a common way of doing things. Anyway, once you're happy with that, hit Create Project. And obviously it will generate your project. Again, generally it's fairly quick, depending on your computer spec. And here we are inside the editor. So what I'm going to focus on now is importing our game assets. Well, I suppose just quickly, right click, you can move your mouse around. Right click, hold down right click and move. With right click still held down, if you use the WASD keys, you can move around your map as such. So we just got this template map here, which we're going to import our tower into. You can delete some stuff, so delete that, for example. So to add things, you've got your folder structure down here. If I click this little icon, I can access all my folders. I'm going to go to the main content folder, and I'm going to create a new folder actually here. Right click, new folder, and call it tower for now. How you manage your file structure is obviously up to you. So inside tower, I want to go add import, and I'm going to click this one here, import to game. Find my desktop, so there's my exported file from earlier on, and push open. You shouldn't need, at this point, with just a 3D model like we've got, to change anything here. So keep it as the default and hit import all. 9 times out of 10 you're going to get an error message. Things like smoothing groups, for example, that doesn't really make a difference, particularly for these low poly models. Don't worry about any of that. Let's close that down. You'll notice that when I first imported all of this, it didn't have the textures on. It does take a couple of minutes to sort of work out the shaders and things. Again, the speed of that is going to depend on your computer, but you can see mine's all loaded in here. I've got all the materials that I was using. I've got my barrel, I've got my crate, and I've got my tower. And you simply just click and drag your asset into the game. And there it is. So W, E, and R moves between move, rotate, and scale. So, there's the door. Turn that around. And you might think the scale is way off. So if I click up here, play, I'm going to turn the sound off actually, so it's not going crazy. If I click play, preview the game. And here you've got this gun, you can move around with WSD. Yeah, the tower, the scale isn't quite right. So although I put in the scale, the dimensions originally for the model in 3ds Max, it's not quite right. So I'm going to come out of that, and I'm just going to get my scale tool. From the middle of the scale gizmo, click and drag a couple of times there, until that door feels about, it's still like below my head height, so I'm going to try that again. A couple more. One more maybe. You might think I'm wrong, but that seems fine. Yeah, and there we have the tower, and because we imported these as separate models, they weren't attached. I can now bring them in, and the pivot point, that important thing we talked about, is in the center of this object because I centered the object before I exported it. So these might want to be a bit bigger. Crates, scale those up. And there they are in the scene. Still a bit small maybe. A bit bigger. Okay, that's fine. You can scale it. The idea is you might want some physics. So just a real quick how to add physics on. If I click it, click the item, and the first thing you'll see over here is simulate physics. You can just tick that on both of those. To be honest, by default, it's not going to seem very realistic. If I walk into it, I can bump into them, but notice how that crate just went flying. They're made of nothing, 100 miles. So obviously, the physics needs adjusting, but just a quick way to add that on. And yeah, there we have our game assets in the scene. And I think that's about all we need to show for this video.